Jimmy, it didn't have his name next to the scripture reading. That's why I read it. Plus, I also skipped some verses because it's hot, you know, and I have mercy on congregations where there's no air conditioning. If they have air conditioning in the sanctuary, tough. You're going to get the whole thing. So I'm trying desperately to figure out, you know, what things are totally unessential to throw out. But I'm not going to throw this out. This is a great little cartoon. You probably can't see it, but I'll tell you what it is about. I found it a few months ago. It's about shared sacrifices. You know, our government is always talking about how we need to share sacrifices. And especially the rich. They need to be taxed a whole lot more. So there are two people listed here. Judy Peaches, a third-grade teacher, and Joseph P. Shirk, Wall Street CEO. Judy Peaches is tasked with nurturing the intellects and talents of our best shot at keeping America great. Her pay is $34,000 a year, and her bonus is hugs. Joseph Shirk very nearly drove the economy off a cliff, decimating public pension plans in the process. His pay is $5,900,000. His bonus is $24 million. And guess who gets to make the shared sacrifices? Well, compromise is good, but as we talked about in the junior sermon or the children's sermon, we have to decide when it's right to compromise and when it isn't. So is it possible for these people to compromise on the following issues? Husband and wife looking for a car. The husband would like a nice sport convertible. I mean, you know, he's something like 63, almost 64. He's trying to recapture his youth. I don't know anybody like that. But he wants a sport convertible. And the wife, who's a whole lot younger and has 2 kids, the wife says, we need a minivan. So what do they compromise on? A small SUV. A small sport SUV. Or denomination style of church. Maybe the husband grew up Catholic, the wife grew up Baptist or Pentecostal or whatever. Is there some compromise? Well, somewhere between the Lutheran, Methodist, and actually Presbyterian sometimes works very well. So people can compromise on those issues. What about these issues? Whether or not abortion is murder. Whether or not, and these are in order from, you know, birth to death. Whether or not it's okay to spank. Spanking a child bad? Does it ruin his psyche? Okay for gays and lesbians to be ordained elders and pastors? Is it okay to practice the death penalty? Is Jesus 100% God and 100% man in the same person? Well, you ever looked at the dictionary definition of compromise? Our young lady this morning gave us a fairly good definition. But there are 2 main definitions. One that's positive and one that's negative. And you're maybe getting that idea this morning. The positive definition of compromise is to agree by adjusting conflicting claims or principles by reciprocal modification of demands. Obviously, that's a dictionary definition. But to come to agreement by adjusting what you really want and how willing you are to fight for it. Well, for example, to our liberals in Congress, that may mean Medicare and Social Security have to be revamped. To conservatives, that may mean taxes have to rise. Now, has anybody got a good compromise this morning? You know, you might want to share that later on. I was going to have you share it now, but, you know, we haven't got a lot of time here, so... You know, think about a good compromise that you know of, a good and right compromise. Now, the importance of compromise is in the Scripture because the Bible encourages unity. In John chapter 17, there's this famous passage in the prayer of Jesus where Jesus says, the goal is for all of them to become one heart and mind, just as you, Father, are in me and I in you, so they may be one heart and mind with us. Then the world might believe that you in fact sent me. That unity, that sense of compromise and being one is a witness to the world that Jesus is God in the flesh, sent by the Father. The same glory you gave me, I gave them, so they'll be as unified and together as we are, I and them and you mature in this oneness, and give the godless world evidence that you've sent me and loved them the same way you've loved me. And then 1 Corinthians 1:10 that we read, where Paul says, I urge you to agree, all of you, to be of one heart and one mind. Presbyterian Church USA ordination vows say three things. And when I first had to say these vows to be ordained, I said, who can do this? It says, do you promise to study and practice peace, unity, and purity all together? Peace, unity, and purity. Well, if you focus too much on purity, you're not going to have peace and unity, as we may know. If you focus on peace, let's all get along, ain't going to do well on purity, I'm pretty sure. The Evangelical Presbyterian Church motto, funny I should mention that, says unity in essentials, liberty in non-essentials, and charity in all things. There we go, importance of unity again. Abraham Lincoln said, a house divided against itself cannot stand. A government can't endure what? Half what and half what? Half slave and half free. But in 2 Corinthians chapter 6, and I read this earlier, in 2 Corinthians chapter 6, Paul says, so leave the corruption and compromise. Leave it for good, says God. Don't link up with those who will pollute you. I want you to be all for myself. And 1 Corinthians 5:9-13 says that we should separate from ungodly folks, but not the people in the world. That's really what 2 Corinthians 6 is about. 1 Corinthians 5 is talking about people who are brothers and sisters, people who are Christians, who are practicing sin, and claiming, hey, I'm okay, I'm part of the body here. Now, you might say, well, if we're supposed to, judge, evaluate, discern people in the body, what about Matthew 7, 1-5? Matthew 7, 1-5. Judge not, lest you be judged. Let me read those verses to you, and let's understand what it really says. Do not judge, or you too will be judged. Okay, that sounds pretty clear. But then it goes on. For in the same way you judge others, you will be judged. And with the measure you use, it will be measured to you. Okay, if you're going to judge somebody else, it's like, I think there was somebody recently, who was guilty. Oh, it was a football player. It was just on the news the other day. He was guilty of driving under the influence. But he was out there stating a strong message against people who were texting while they were driving. Okay, well, if you're going to be against people texting while driving, make sure you're not accused of drinking and driving, all right? So it just says that you have to make sure you're okay in that area. Why do you look at the speck in your brother's eye, paying no attention to the plank in your eye? You hypocrite, first take the plank out of your own eye, then you will see clearly to remove the speck from your brother's eye. If you deal with yourself first and examine yourself first, then you are able to evaluate, discern, deal with the other person. So it's not necessarily a total prohibition against judging someone else, evaluating their sin. Adrian Rogers, a preacher now deceased, said, it's better to be divided by truth than be united in error. And Rob Bell has a book out. Anybody heard of Rob Bell's book, Love Wins? It's about heaven and hell and all the people who ever lived. Rob Bell gets dangerously close to saying everybody goes to heaven no matter what they believe because love wins. Ultimately, God enfolds everybody in His love. Well, a very famous preacher out in the Midwest, John Piper, tweeted, for those of you who Twitter and tweet, farewell, Rob Bell, you're not part of the evangelical community anymore. But Steve Brown, that deep-voiced guy on the radio, calls Rob a brother and respects him for raising the salvation issue for discussion. So there are times when we need to compromise. There are positive times to compromise, trying to understand somebody else, like Steve Brown is doing with Rob Bell. But then there's the negative definition of compromise. To expose, to make vulnerable to danger or suspicion or scandal, to jeopardize, to concede shamefully. In other words, to damage something by, or damage a relationship, to damage a process, to damage a home, a country, a government, whatever, by making a compromise that's not good. In military operations, I noted the people in the back here of your pictorial directory who have been in the service. We salute our military. And there's a picture of Jimmy Barker only about 10 years ago. And a picture of Daniel from just last year, yeah. At any rate, you know, in the military operations, you compromise the mission by giving certain information to the enemy or failing to act. You compromise in a negative, bad way by diluting the needed potency of a product, by tainting the data. There was a book years ago, How to Lie with Statistics. To politically kick the can down the road. To put cat poop in brownies. So the goal is to speak the truth without being arrogant. To say graciously, we're right, we have the truth, deal with it. And, you know, it's sometimes hard to do that graciously. Again, I have a great cartoon that I can't avoid using here. Anybody ever read Pearls Before Swine? It's a comic strip in the newspaper. If you like House on TV, you probably like Pearls Before Swine because it's the same kind of humor here. And everybody in Pearls Before Swine is just called rat, pig, goat. They don't have any real names. They're just what they are. So goat is looking at rat, and rat is the negative. But rat is like the boss in Dilbert, the pointy-out-eared boss in Dilbert. I mean, he's the negative character. Goat says to rat, "Why are you wearing a halo and wings?" Rat says, "I, rat, have found religion." Goat says, "You?" And rat says, "Yes, my brother, I am even fasting for Lent." Goat says, "Fasting? What are you giving up? Meat? Alcohol?" Rat says, "Morons." Goat says, "Morons?" And rat says, "Yes, brother, for the next 24 days I will no longer chat with the simpletons and idiots around me." This is not dealing graciously with those people on the other side, is the point here. Goat says, angrily, "How can you claim to be religious if you're going around calling people you talk to morons and simpletons and idiots?" And there's a little silence. Goat says, "You're not going to respond?" Rat says, "I'd be breaking my fast." Goat says, "Why do I?" And the rat says, "Away, chowderhead, tempt me not." Talk to a simpleton or an idiot. Well, that's not the way to be gracious about the truth that you believe you have and the right that you have not to compromise for the sake of the good. So what's God say about compromise? It's important to love one another without compromising convictions. In Exodus 20, verse 3, the list of the Ten Commandments, God says, "I am the Lord thy God, thou shalt have no other gods before me." It's pretty simple. We can't compromise. We can't have, the golden calf and God. Yeah, right. As a matter of fact, in the story in Exodus about the golden calf, you ever realize the humor there? Moses comes down from the mountain after getting the Ten Commandments, and the people are down there. Have you ever seen the movie The Ten Commandments? People are down there having a good time partying, and there's this golden calf and all that. Moses comes up to Aaron, and he says to his brother Aaron, "What's going on here? What happened?" And this is the literal words of the scripture. Aaron says, "I really don't know, Moses. I gathered all the gold from the people, I threw it in the fire, and out came this calf." No, I don't think so. In Joshua 24, Joshua says, "As for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. The Lord will tolerate no rivals. He's a jealous God." Matthew 6:24, you can't serve two gods. So what about divisions and differences? John MacArthur, commenting on 1 Corinthians 1:10 about the unified, says this, "In matters on which the Scripture is not explicit, there is room for difference of opinion. But in the clear teachings of the Bible, there's no room for difference, because to differ with the Bible is to differ with God." Now, the potential problem with the evangelical Presbyterian church